Hi kids, this video is on fraction understanding and fraction vocabulary. You do not have to take notes. This is meant to watch, and for those of you that struggle with fractions, I hope that this video helps. If you want to write down notes, if you find this helpful, you sure can. Many kids struggle with fractions, and I just wanted to go through some fraction vocabulary and ideas for how you can better understand fractions and get more comfortable with fractions. A lot of kids say that fractions are the thing that they need help with the most. So if that's you, welcome, and let's start talking about fractions. First of all, a fraction is a part of a group, a part of a number, or a part of a whole. I'm also going to be doing quite a bit of drawing. I think that drawing out fractions is super helpful. Fractions, here are some examples: 2/3, 1/4, 5/6, and 3/8. Most of the time when we talk about fractions, most kids think of proper fractions. These are all proper fractions, and that means they are a part of a whole. They're less than 1, and you'll see that when we start modeling. And we'll also talk about later in this video improper fractions. So, the very first thing that I want to talk about in understanding fractions is the denominator. The denominator is the bottom number of any fraction. Okay, it's the bottom number, and it tells how many parts the whole is divided into. When you are trying to understand a fraction, I'm going to write this in huge letters. You should always start here with the denominator. Okay, start on the ground floor, the bottom, the denominator. Start with the denominator, and it tells you how many parts the whole is divided into. So if I go back up to these fractions, I would start with the 3. Ignore the top numbers for now. Pretend they're not even there. That 3 tells me that there are 3 parts in one whole. And I'm going to do some pizza modeling with circles. So that 3, before I try to do anything else, that 3 tells me this. If I have a pizza, there are 3 slices, and they should be same size parts. You should try to make, I'm going to write that in here. The parts should be the same size or as close as you can get to making them the same size. 1/4, again, I'm ignoring the numerator. That 4 right here, the first thing I do is look at the denominator and I lock into that. 4 means 4 slices in one whole. 6, I draw a pizza and I start with that. There are 6 slices in a whole pizza. 8, same thing. I start with 8 slices in one whole pizza. Always, always, always start with the denominator, and you are locked in to what that denominator is. You can't change it. If it's a 3, you're thinking that. If it's a 2, let's do some more modeling here. If you see that, you are thinking this. You're starting with that. Doesn't matter what the denominator is. Doesn't matter what the numerator is. Start with the denominator. If my denominator is 5, I'm right away going to that. If my denominator is 100, a percent. Now, I'm not going to be able to draw this, but I'm going to kind of model it. in my mind, I can't draw 100 slices in here. They're going to be sliver slices, super tiny. But I'm thinking this. I'm just thinking that there's so many slices in this thing. There's 100 slices in that. Whatever your denominator is, you are locked into, that's how many slices are in one whole pizza. So always start with your denominator. That's one of the big mistakes kids make, is they don't lock in the denominator, and that's where they lose understanding in fractions. Okay, so after you have thought about the denominator and you know that that's how many slices are in one whole, then you can look at the numerator. The numerator tells you it's the top number, and the numerator tells you how many parts of the whole that you have. I'm going to go back to my examples up here. So the numerator of 2 means I've got 2 slices. That's my model for 2/3. 1 slice here, I'm only going to shade in 1. 5, I'm going to shade in 3, 4, 5. 3/8, I'm going to shade in 1, 2, 3. So I hope that helps. The number one hint that I can tell you with fractions is when you're trying to understand a fraction, start on the ground floor. Start with your denominator. Whatever your denominator is, draw it out, or in your mind, build a mental picture. If it's a 2, you're thinking this. If it's a 5, this. 4 slices. 6 slices, and so on. If it's 100 slices. Doesn't matter what the number is. If I had 1,000 as my denominator, I can't even draw that at all, okay? But that would mean that these slices, I'm going to go to my pencil here because I would just be doing this. I can't even draw it, right? They're so small. There's 1,000 slices in the pizza, okay? So, number one star tip for understanding fractions is start with your denominator, always, always. Draw it out if that helps you, or at very least in your mind, you're thinking pizzas with that many slices, the number of your denominator. Okay, moving on. Again, these are, most of the time, you're more used to fractions where the numerator is less than the denominator, and those are called proper fractions. It's always going to be less than a whole. We don't have a whole pizza here. We don't have a whole pizza here. We don't have a whole pizza on any of these. Okay, so a proper fraction is always going to be less than a full pizza. An improper fraction, let's get a different color going here. An improper fraction is where the numerator is greater than or equal to the denominator. Okay, most of the time it's greater than, but it could also be equal to the denominator. Another way to think about an improper fraction is that it's top heavy. Up till now, most of the fractions that you've seen in elementary, they were proper fractions, less than a whole. Improper fractions are greater than or equal to one whole. Let's model out 9/4. So going back to what I said earlier, always start with your denominator. That 4 locks me into this right there. Can't change it. I'm locked into that 4 means this. Well, my numerator is a 9. That means I have to shade in 9, So there's 1, there's 2, there's 3, there's 4. I have to make a new pizza in order to keep going. I still need to shade in 9, but again, that 4 is locked in stone. I can't change it. So I make another pizza with 4. I shade in, that's my 5th slice, 6, 7, 8. I need to make another pizza. I would continue doing this until I can shade in whatever my numerator is. So 9, the improper fraction 9/4. This is the model for 9/4. That's what it would look like. 5/5. Okay, if I were to model 5/5, I would again start here with my denominator. The denominator 5 means that I am starting with this model, or in my head, that. The numerator 5, numerator on top tells me how many to shade in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's my model for 5/5, which is also the same thing as 1 whole. If you had 10/10, you can imagine that there would be 10 slices in the whole pizza according to your denominator, and you would shade in 10, and that still would be 1 whole. Okay, the last thing that we're going to talk about is a mixed number. Let's get the camera aimed down a little bit. And a mixed number is when you have a whole number and a fraction together. I'm actually going to, my examples here, whoops, I want the green. Okay, so a mixed number is a whole number and a fraction. I'm going to look back up here to 9/4 and see that this is my model. Well, from this model, I could also rewrite this model as a mixed number. How many whole numbers do I have, or how many whole pizzas? In this model, I've got 2 whole pizzas. Whole number 2. How much of a pizza is just that? I'm covering up the 2. Name this amount. That would be, I see 4 pieces. That's my denominator. 4 pieces altogether. My denominator is 4. 1 shaded in. Naming that amount right there is 1/4. So 2 and 1/4 is a mixed number, and it is equivalent to this. 9/4. Here's 9/4. That is also the same thing as 2 and 1/4. Let's do one other example of a mixed number, and we will also draw it out. Let's draw out 3 and 2/3. Whole number 3, and when you see a mixed number like that, you read it separating the whole number and the fraction. 3 and 2/3. To build that, to build this, to model it out, I've got 3 whole pizzas. I can start right away with 1, 2, 3. Completely full. Okay, all full. All full. 2/3. On the last pizza, it is divided into thirds, and I'm shading in 2. Here is a model for 3 and 2/3. That is it for this lesson on fraction understanding and vocabulary. The biggest thing that I find as a help for most kids is this right here. You have to start with your denominator, and your denominator is locked in stone. If it's 2, that's your model, or what you should picture in your head. 5, this is what you're picturing. Always start with your denominator, and that tells you how many pieces are in one whole pizza, top number. Then address the top number, how many you shade in. I hope this helps with fraction understanding. Look for future fraction understanding lessons on moving from mixed to improper, and also I am going to do a fraction lesson on simplifying fractions. Again, hope that helps. Let me know of other topics that you'd like to see as how-to topics. Thanks.